The mind is a vast ocean filled with currents of thoughts, emotions, and memories that swirl together in an endless dance. Some waves rise with the force of joy, lifting us to euphoric heights, while others crash down with the weight of sorrow, pulling us into the depths of despair. But beyond the surface turbulence, there is a stillness, a deep, unshaken awareness that watches everything unfold. Most people spend their entire lives caught in the restless tides, never realizing that they can go deeper, beyond the ceaseless motion, into the calm expanse where true wisdom resides. From the moment we open our eyes as children, the world begins to mold our perceptions. We are given names, identities, beliefs, all carved by the hands of culture, family, and experience. Without questioning, we accept these as reality, never suspecting that they are mere veils covering a greater truth. We chase ambitions, wealth, and love, believing they will complete us. But always there remains a whisper in the background, a quiet knowing that something essential is missing. This is the call of wisdom, beckoning us to look beyond the illusions and into the heart of existence itself. To understand life, one must first understand the mind. The mind is not a single entity, but a complex interplay of conditioning and awareness. There is the mind that reacts, the mind that remembers, the mind that judges, and the mind that simply watches. Most live through the first three, prisoners of their thoughts, slaves to their emotions. But those who discover the fourth, those who awaken to the silent observer within, find a doorway leading to liberation. Imagine a traveler lost in an endless forest. The trees are thick, the paths winding, and every turn seems to lead deeper into confusion. This is how most people experience life. They search for meaning in the ever-changing, hoping to find stability in things that are impermanent. But what if the traveler stopped? What if, instead of running in circles, he stood still, closed his eyes, and listened? In that stillness, the path would reveal itself. This is the secret hidden in all great spiritual traditions. The understanding that clarity does not come from searching outward, but from turning inward. But turning inward is not easy. The moment one attempts to be still, the mind rebels. Thoughts race like wild horses. Fears arise like unseen ghosts, and the weight of past and future presses down with unbearable force. This is why most avoid introspection. It is far easier to be distracted, to drown in entertainment, work, or relationships than to sit alone with oneself. Yet, those who persist through the storm find something remarkable. Beyond the chaos, beyond the noise, there is an unshaken presence, a space untouched by suffering. This presence is not something new. It has always been there, watching silently as life unfolds. But recognizing it is like trying to see one's own eyes without a mirror. It requires a shift, a different way of looking. The great sages, the mystics, the enlightened ones, they all saw this, not as an abstract idea, but as the very foundation of reality. They called it by many names: awareness, consciousness, the eternal self. But words can only point to it. To truly know it, one must experience it. And experience it, one must. Because to remain asleep in the illusions of the mind is to live half a life, forever grasping at reflections, never touching the real. True wisdom is not found in books, not in philosophies, not in arguments. It is found in direct perception, in seeing things as they are, beyond the distortions of conditioning. And once seen, it cannot be unseen. It changes everything. But the path is not without trials. The deeper one goes, the more the mind resists. It clings to old identities, fights against dissolution, and refuses to let go of control. There is fear in surrender, for the mind fears annihilation. Yet it is only the false that is destroyed, never the real. What dies is illusion. What remains is truth. And so, the seeker must walk with courage, must be willing to let go of everything they thought they were, to dissolve into the unknown. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, but for those who take it, the reward is beyond words. It is freedom, not the freedom to do as one pleases, but the freedom from the self that pleases and suffers, that wants and fears, that clings and resists. It is the realization that what one has been searching for has always been here, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be seen. The journey inward is not a straight path, nor is it always illuminated. It twists and turns, leading the seeker through valleys of doubt and mountains of revelation. There are moments of profound clarity where everything makes sense, and then there are moments of darkness where all progress seems lost. This is the paradox of awakening. One does not ascend in a linear fashion, but rather, like the ebb and flow of the tide, is pulled forward and then drawn back again and again. For those who walk this path, there comes a time when the outer world begins to lose its hold. The things that once fascinated and captivated, status, possessions, approval, start to feel hollow, like echoes of a forgotten dream. It is not that these things cease to exist, but their importance diminishes. A deeper longing takes their place, a hunger not for things, but for truth. This is a dangerous stage, for many turn back here, afraid of what lies beyond. The mind, sensing its loss of power, fights to reassert itself. It whispers fears of isolation, of meaninglessness, of madness. It tells the seeker to return to the familiar, to abandon the search before it is too late. But the seeker who listens to this fear will remain trapped, forever circling the same illusions. The only way forward is through. And so, they push onward, past the clamor of thoughts, past the distractions of the world, into the silence that waits beneath it all. Silence is a strange thing. To those who fear it, it is suffocating, unbearable. To those who embrace it, it is the doorway to something infinite. It is in silence that the mind's illusions are exposed, where the masks fall away, and where one is forced to confront themselves as they truly are. No roles, no pretenses, no stories, just raw existence, naked and unfiltered. This is where true transformation begins, not in the accumulation of knowledge, but in the shedding of ignorance. The seeker begins to see how much of their life has been dictated by conditioning, by beliefs inherited without question, by desires implanted by forces beyond their control. The illusion of a fixed self starts to crumble, revealing that what they thought was me was never stable, never real. It was a collection of thoughts, emotions, and experiences strung together like beads on a thread, changing from moment to moment, yet clinging desperately to the illusion of permanence. But what remains when the illusion is gone? That is the great mystery. To the unawakened, it seems like emptiness, like annihilation. But to those who have stepped beyond the mind, it is fullness beyond measure. It is not a void, but an overflowing presence, vast and boundless. It is not a loss, but a return to what has always been, to what was merely forgotten in the chaos of thought. The greatest mistake one can make is to think that awakening is something to be achieved, as though it were a prize to be won. It is not a goal, not a destination. It is simply seeing clearly, right now, in this very moment. It is the end of seeking. The realization that what one has been searching for has never been elsewhere. It has been here all along, in the silence, in the stillness, in the space between thoughts. But how does one see? That is the question that haunts every seeker. The truth is, it cannot be forced. One cannot will themselves into awakening any more than they can will the sun to rise. It happens when the conditions are right, when the illusions have been seen through, when the mind has exhausted itself in its search. The irony is that the harder one tries, the further they stray. For it is not effort that reveals the truth, but surrender. The moment one stops grasping, stops struggling, stops demanding answers, that is when the answers reveal themselves. Not in words, not in concepts, but in direct, undeniable experience. And so, the seeker must learn the art of letting go, of loosening their grip on the need for certainty, of allowing the mind to quiet without force. It is not a battle to be won, but a dance to be entered, a dance with existence itself, where every step is guided not by control, but by trust. For those who reach this point, something incredible happens. The world, which once seemed separate, distant, and indifferent, begins to glow with a quiet beauty. The trees, the wind, the stars, everything radiates with a presence that was always there but never noticed. Life becomes lighter, not because problems disappear, but because they no longer weigh down the mind. The endless struggle to become something, to achieve something, to prove something, dissolves. In its place, there is just being. Just this. This is what the awakened ones have always spoken of, what the mystics have tried to express in poetry and paradox. But words will always fail, because the truth is not in the words. It is in the seeing. And to see, one must step beyond thought, beyond fear, beyond the self that clings to its own reflection. Only then does the veil lift, revealing the timeless, boundless reality that has always been. There comes a moment on the path where the seeker realizes they are no longer the same. The mind that once clung desperately to its illusions has begun to loosen its grip. The things that once defined them, their name, their past, their ambitions, start to feel distant, like echoes from another life. The world around them remains unchanged, yet something fundamental has shifted. It is as if they have stepped outside of the dream and are seeing it for what it truly is. At first, this shift is unsettling. The old ways of thinking do not hold the same weight, and the familiar patterns of seeking fulfillment in the external world begin to seem absurd. But the mind, conditioned for so long to grasp at meaning, fights against this realization. It tells the seeker that something is wrong, that they must return to the way things were. It will try to pull them back into distractions, into the comfort of identification, into the endless cycle of wanting and chasing. But for those who do not turn back, something extraordinary happens. The more they let go, the more they begin to feel the presence of something vast, something beyond the limited self they once believed themselves to be. It is not something that can be explained in words, for words belong to the mind, and this presence exists beyond the mind. It is not a belief, not a philosophy, but a direct experience, one so simple, so immediate, that the mind cannot grasp it. For the first time, they begin to taste true freedom, not the freedom to do whatever they want, but the freedom from the very need to want. They no longer feel the compulsion to chase after happiness, because they have realized that what they were chasing was never outside of them. It was always here, hidden beneath the noise of thought, beneath the illusion of separation. But this is not the end of the journey. In fact, it is only the beginning. The realization of truth is one thing, but living in alignment with it is another. The habits of the mind do not dissolve overnight. The patterns of fear, of attachment, of ego still linger, like shadows cast by a setting sun. And so, the real work begins, the work of integration. The seeker must learn to navigate the world from this new understanding, to engage with life without being entangled by it. They must learn to act without attachment, to love without possession, to experience without clinging. This is where many falter, for the pull of the old self is strong. The mind tries to reclaim its throne, whispering doubts, rekindling desires, tempting the seeker to fall back into unconsciousness. But something has changed. The seeker now knows that they are not their thoughts, not their emotions, not the stories they once told themselves. They have seen behind the veil, and no illusion can fully bind them again. Even when they stumble, even when they momentarily fall into old patterns, they are no longer lost. There is an awareness now, a silent watcher that sees without judgment, that witnesses the mind's games without being deceived. This awareness is the key. It is not something to be cultivated, for it has always been there. It is the stillness beneath the storm, the space in which all things arise and pass away. The only difference now is that the seeker recognizes it. They no longer mistake the passing waves for the ocean. They no longer believe that the changing clouds are the sky itself. And with this recognition comes peace, not the peace of a life without difficulty, but the peace of knowing that nothing, no matter how chaotic, can disturb the stillness of what they truly are. For the first time, they understand what it means to be truly alive. Not as a character in a story, not as a person defined by past and future, but as pure awareness, present and untouched. They walk the same streets, see the same faces, hear the same sounds, but everything is different. The world has not changed, only their perception has, and that changes everything. There is no longer a need to seek, because they have realized that there was never anything to find. The search was an illusion, a game played by the mind. The truth was always here, waiting to be seen, waiting to be remembered. And so, they no longer fight, no longer resist. They allow life to flow as it will, knowing that they are not separate from it. They surrender, not in defeat, but in understanding. And in this surrender, they find the one thing they had been searching for all along. Time itself seems to slow as the seeker steps further into this new way of being. The urgency that once dictated their every thought, the relentless pursuit of something just out of reach, begins to dissolve. There is no longer a race to be won, no destination to be arrived at. Each moment unfolds with a quiet perfection, untouched by the mind's need to judge, to categorize, to control. The seeker begins to notice things they had always overlooked. The way the wind moves through the trees, the subtle shifts in light throughout the day, the quiet rhythm of their own breath. These were always there, waiting to be seen. But the mind, so consumed with its endless commentary, had kept them hidden. Now, with each passing day, the veil of distraction grows thinner, but the old patterns do not vanish completely. There are still moments of struggle, moments when the weight of past conditioning creeps in. The ego does not surrender so easily. It fights for its survival, weaving illusions of fear and doubt, whispering reminders of the old ways. It tells the seeker that they are slipping, that they are losing something, that this stillness is emptiness, that this freedom is isolation. And for a moment, they may believe it. The mind is clever, its tricks refined over a lifetime of conditioning. It knows how to pull them back into the familiar, into the comfortable patterns of attachment and identity. But something is different now. There is a space between these thoughts, a gap where silence reigns, and in that silence, the seeker remembers. They are not the voice in their head. They begin to laugh at the absurdity of it all. The struggle, the suffering, the years spent chasing an illusion. It was all a dream, a self-imposed illusion. The game of seeking, of wanting, of defining oneself through fleeting experiences has lost its grip. They are no longer a prisoner of the mind's endless cycle. And yet, life continues. They still wake up in the morning, still interact with the world, still feel emotions, still experience the highs and lows of existence. But there is a difference now, an unshakable knowing that none of it defines them. They play their roles, but they no longer mistake the role for the actor. This is the paradox of awakening. Nothing changes, and yet everything does. The world remains the same, but their relationship with it is transformed. They no longer grasp at things, no longer fight against what is. Instead, they flow with life, like a river moving effortlessly towards the ocean. But this is not detachment in the way the mind once imagined it. It is not a cold indifference, not an escape from feeling. In fact, it is the opposite. For the first time, they are fully present in every experience. They love more deeply, but without possession. They feel pain, but without resistance. They experience loss, but without despair. And in this state of presence, they begin to see the world through new eyes. They recognize the struggle in others, the deep longing that underlies every action, every word, every desire. They see how people cling to illusions, just as they once did, searching for fulfillment in places where it cannot be found. But they do not judge. They understand that each person must walk their own path, must come to their own realization in their own time. They do not seek to change anyone, do not impose their understanding on others. Instead, they simply exist as they are, fully present, fully aware, fully alive. And in doing so, they become a light in the darkness, not by speaking great truths or teaching complex philosophies, but simply by being. Those who are ready will see it, will feel it, will be drawn to it. And in their presence, others may begin to remember something long forgotten. This is the quiet unfolding of truth, not through force, not through effort, but through the simple act of being. The journey is not about attaining something new, but about removing what was never real to begin with. It is not about becoming more, but about shedding everything that is not truly them. And so, the seeker walks forward, not towards a goal, not towards an end, but simply in alignment with what is. There's nothing left to chase, nothing left to find. There is only this moment, unfolding as it always has, perfect in its imperfection. For the first time, they are truly free. Not because they have escaped the world, but because they have stopped fighting it. Not because they have attained something, but because they have let go. And in this letting go, they have found what was always there, their own infinite, timeless being. There is an odd beauty in surrender, a kind of peace that cannot be found through effort. It is not the surrender of defeat, not a resignation to fate, but rather the effortless allowing of all things to be exactly as they are. seeker now understand this in a way they never could before. The endless grasping, the desperate need to define, to categorize, to hold on to something, it was all the root of suffering. But now, with open hands and an open heart, they move through life like the wind, touching everything, clinging to nothing. Yet the world continues its old dance around them. People hurry from place to place, chasing dreams woven from expectation. They speak in hurried tones, their minds full of worries, their hearts heavy with burdens that are not theirs to carry. The seeker watches, not with detachment, not with judgment, but with a deep and quiet understanding. They remember what it was like to live that way, to be caught in the illusion of time, the illusion of self, the constant anxiety of trying to control the uncontrollable, the deep frustration of never quite arriving at the happiness that was always just beyond reach. They know that for most, this cycle will continue. Some will chase wealth, others love. Some will seek meaning in titles, in knowledge, in achievements. And yet, beneath it all, there will always be the same longing, the same whisper that something is missing. But how does one explain the vastness of what has been discovered? How does one describe a sky to someone who has lived their entire life underground? How does one convey the taste of water to someone who has never known thirst? The seeker realizes that words are inadequate, that truth cannot be given. It can only be discovered. And so, they do not preach, do not seek to convince. They simply exist, radiating the silent presence of someone who is truly free. And sometimes, without seeking it, others begin to notice. A friend asks why they seem so at peace, why the small things that once disturbed them no longer seem to touch them. A stranger is drawn to them without understanding why, feeling a calmness in their presence that is rare in this restless world. They smile, not because they hold some secret, but because they know there is no secret. It is so simple, so obvious, that the mind refuses to believe it. The very thing people spend their lives searching for is already here, already within them. The only barrier is the belief that something else is needed. And so, the seeker no longer seeks. They move through life with ease, whether they are walking through the forest or standing in a crowded marketplace, whether they are in solitude or among people. The external world no longer dictates their inner state. There are still moments of challenge. Life does not cease to bring its storms. There are still losses, still moments of grief, still days when the weight of the world presses against them. But now, these moments pass like waves against the shore, rising and falling without resistance. There is no longer a struggle, no longer an argument with reality. One day, as they sit by a river, watching the water flow without hesitation, without fear, something shifts within them. They see their own life reflected in its current, always moving, never clinging, always becoming, never arriving. And in that moment, a deeper understanding arises. There was never a final destination. There was never some great enlightenment to attain. There was only this moment, this breath, this ever-changing, ever-flowing experience of being. For so long, they had sought to understand, to grasp the truth. But now, they see that truth is not something to be grasped. It is something to be lived. It is in the movement of the trees, in the laughter of a child, in the stillness of the stars. It is in the rising and falling of their own breath, in the silent witness that has always been there, watching, waiting, knowing. And for the first time, the seeker stops, not in defeat, not in exhaustion, but in the realization that there is nowhere else to go. They are already home. The sky stretches vast and open above them, its endless expanse mirroring the depth of the silence within. The seeker stands beneath it, feeling no need to move, no need to search, no need to be anything more than what they already are. The journey that once seemed so desperate, so urgent, has melted into the simplicity of existence itself. There was never a destination. There was never some grand moment of enlightenment that would change everything. The realization that dawns upon them now is not an explosion, not a revelation, but a gentle, almost humorous understanding. This is it. This moment, as it is, without any embellishment, without any story, is the thing they had been seeking all along. For so long, they had lived under the illusion that something was missing, that they were incomplete, that the answers were hidden in some distant future. But the truth had always been hiding in plain sight. The wind that rustles through the trees, the quiet hum of the earth beneath their feet, the steady rhythm of their own heartbeat, existence itself had been whispering its secret all along. And now, for the first time, they are listening. They walk, not towards anything, not away from anything, but simply for the sake of walking. The path is no longer a means to an end, but an end in itself. Each step is complete. Each breath is a world unto itself. There is nothing outside of this moment that needs to be grasped, nothing behind them that needs to be understood, nothing ahead that needs to be anticipated. People pass by, wrapped in the stories of their own lives. Some are lost in worry, some are lost in desire, some are chasing dreams they do not yet realize are illusions. And yet, the seeker does not see them as separate. They are all the same, all caught in the same great unfolding, the same cosmic dance. There is no judgment, no sense of superiority, only an understanding that everything is as it should be. The idea of self, the fragile construct they had once protected so fiercely, now feels like a mirage. The boundaries between I and the world have begun to dissolve. They are no longer confined to this body, no longer defined by the thoughts that come and go. They are the sky, the river, the laughter of a child, the rustling of the leaves. They are everything and nothing at once. There is a profound peace in knowing that nothing needs to be controlled. Life moves as it always has, with or without effort. The sun does not struggle to rise. The rivers do not resist their course. The seasons change without hesitation. And now, the seeker moves in harmony with it all, no longer swimming against the current of existence. The weight of time dissolves. The past, with all its regrets and attachments, no longer binds them. The future, with all its imagined possibilities, no longer holds them captive. Only now exists, and in this now, there is an infinite, boundless freedom. One evening, as they sit by the water's edge, watching the sun dissolve into the horizon, a single tear slips down their cheek. Not from sadness, not from joy, but from something deeper, a gratitude beyond words, a gratitude for everything, for every step, for every mistake, for every moment of suffering that led to this stillness, this knowing. They had once thought enlightenment was something to be attained, a place one reaches and never leaves. But now they see the truth. There is no arrival, no finality. The great mystery remains. The universe continues to unfold. The river continues to flow. And they, like everything else, are simply moving with it. The seeker smiles, not because they have found the answers, but because they no longer need them. there is only the living, the breathing, the being. And that, as it turns out, is more than enough. Night falls gently upon the world, wrapping everything in a quiet stillness. The seeker stands beneath the stars, each one a distant fire burning in the abyss, a reminder of how small they are, how vast everything else is. And yet, in that smallness, there is something profound, an intimacy with the universe, a recognition that they have never been separate from it. The breeze moves through the trees, carrying whispers from unseen places. They close their eyes, listening not with their ears, but with something deeper, something beyond the senses. There is a rhythm to everything, a silent song that has been playing since the beginning of time. For so long, they had been deaf to it, caught in the noise of the mind, lost in the chaos of thought. But now, the song is clear. It has always been there, beneath the surface of all things. A thought drifts through their awareness like a feather on the wind. What is left to seek? The question, which would have once sent them into spirals of contemplation, now has no grip on them. It is like a ripple in a vast ocean, appearing and dissolving with no resistance. There is no urge to chase answers, no hunger for certainty. Everything simply is, and that is enough. They walk, their steps unburdened, their heart as light as the sky above. The past no longer pulls them back, and the future does not pull them forward. They are fully here, completely immersed in the unfolding of now. The stars shine without reason. The river flows without hesitation, and they exist without expectation. A village lies ahead, its lights glowing softly in the night. As they pass through, they see people engaged in their lives. Laughter spilling from a small gathering, a child running barefoot through the streets, an old man sitting alone in quiet reflection. Each one is living in their own world, carrying dreams, fears, and desires that shape their reality. The seeker watches, not as an outsider, but as one who understands. There is no longer any need to convince, to change, to teach. The world moves as it should. The people move as they must. And there is a beauty in that, in the chaos, in the imperfection. The seeker does not seek to escape it, but embraces it all, knowing that the dance of existence is perfect in its incompleteness. They find a quiet place to sit, a small wooden bench beneath an ancient tree. The tree has stood for generations, witnessing countless lives pass beneath its branches. It doesn't cling to its leaves when the seasons change, does not resist the storms that bend its limbs. It simply exists, allowing the flow of life to move through it, and in doing so, it remains timeless. The seeker smiles, realizing that they too have become like this tree, rooted yet free, present yet unattached. The wind moves through their hair, carrying with it the scent of distant rain. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimes softly, marking the passage of time. But to them, time no longer holds weight. They have stepped beyond it, beyond the illusion of before and after. A cat wanders by, pausing to study them with curious eyes before continuing on its way. It moves without worry, without thought, guided by something far more natural than the mind's constant calculations. The seeker watches it disappear into the shadows, feeling a deep kinship with the simple creature. In some ways, they have become the same, free to move, free to be, unbound by anything but the moment itself. The night deepens, the stars brighter now against the darkened sky. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do, no path left to follow. And yet, the journey is not over. It will never be over. The road continues, but not as a means to an end. It is simply the way of things, the unfolding of the great mystery. The seeker stands, stretching their arms towards the sky, as if embracing the universe itself. There's nothing left to chase, nothing left to grasp. Only this breath, this step, this moment. They walk forward, not towards anything, but with everything. And in that, they are finally home. The mind is like an endless ocean, vast and ever-changing, filled with currents of thought that twist and turn in unpredictable ways. Some waves rise with joy, lifting us to places where everything feels possible, while others crash with sorrow, dragging us into the depths of despair. And yet, beneath all the turbulence, there exists a silence, a stillness, untouched by the chaos of the surface. Most people spend their entire lives being tossed around by these waves, never realizing that they can dive deeper, that they can escape the storm and find the peace that lies beneath it all. From the moment we are born, we are handed a set of beliefs, given a name, an identity, a history that we do not question. Society molds us, shaping our thoughts, our fears, our ambitions. Without ever pausing, we accept these as reality, believing that success, love, and achievement will bring us fulfillment. But somewhere in the background, a whisper remains, a quiet knowing that something isn't quite right, that something is missing. This is the call of wisdom, the invitation to look beyond the illusions we have been taught and into the very heart of existence itself. To truly see, to truly understand, one must first turn inward. The mind is not one thing, but a collection of forces, each pulling us in different directions. There is the mind that remembers, the mind that judges, the mind that reacts, and then, deeper still, there is the silent observer, the one who simply watches. Most people live trapped in the first three, bound by thoughts, consumed by emotions, entangled in the past and future. But those who awaken to the fourth, those who discover the presence beneath it all, find something extraordinary. They find the key to their own liberation. Imagine a traveler lost in a dense forest. The trees are endless, the paths uncertain, and no matter which way he turns, he finds himself deeper in confusion. This is how most people experience life. They seek clarity in the external world, searching for answers in things that are fleeting, money, relationships, achievements, never realizing that what they seek cannot be found outside of them. But what if the traveler stopped running? What if, instead of searching desperately, he stood still, closed his eyes, and listened? In that stillness, something remarkable would happen. The path would reveal itself. This is the wisdom hidden in every great spiritual teaching. That true clarity does not come from looking outward, but from turning inward. Yet this journey is not easy. The moment one attempts to be still, the mind revolts. Thoughts race, fears rise, memories resurface, and suddenly, silence feels unbearable. This is why most people avoid introspection. They distract themselves with entertainment, work, relationships, anything to keep from facing themselves. But those who persist through the storm, those who dare to sit in their own presence, discover something incredible. Beyond the noise, beyond the distractions, there is a presence, an awareness untouched by suffering. It has always been there, watching, waiting, silently witnessing the unfolding of life. But recognizing it is like trying to see one's own eyes without a mirror. It requires a shift, a different way of looking. The great sages, the enlightened ones, they all spoke of this, not as a concept, but as the foundation of reality itself. They called it consciousness, awareness, the eternal self. But words are only pointers. To truly understand, one must experience it directly. And experience it, one must. Because to live trapped in the mind's illusions is to live only half a life, forever grasping at reflections, never touching what is real. Wisdom is not found in books, not in philosophies, not in endless debates. It is found in seeing things as they are, without distortion, without judgment. And once seen, it can never be unseen. It changes everything. But the journey is not without resistance. The deeper one goes, the more the mind fights back. It clings to old identities, fears its own dissolution,